Chapter 2. Why? Yankuba scolded himself. Was he feeling guilty for having done the right thing? How could his logic be so illogical at this crucial period of his adult relationship with his parents? He pushed the problem to the back of his mind, and then stood up with some exercise books. A problem that remained unsolved was beyond him. Life had to go on. He walked out of the staff room and went across the pebbled compound to his class as if to prove his point. He wrote some mathematical problems on the blackboard for the class, and while the pupils frowned at the blank pages of their notebooks and chewed their pencils in search of the answers, Yankuba sat behind his desk and buried his head behind a detective novel, trying to solve the murder mystery before the detective hero did. Teacher Yankuba. A small boy broke into his concentration by walking into the class. Headmaster say, he won, see you sir. Yankuba closed the novel with a sigh. I have heard you. I am coming. He waved at the boy. Now run back to your class. The boy dashed out, holding up his hands like a driving wheel, drawing a faint smile from Yankuba. Calling the class to attention, Yankuba warned the class prefect that if there was any noise during his absence, the prefect would be held responsible. To free himself, the prefect must write down the names of noisemakers. Then Yankuba walked up along the school building to the headmaster's office. He knocked on the door and let himself in. Both the office and the desk occupied by the big head man were big. Yankuba turned to the left to look at the person seated in front of the headmaster's desk. His heart gave a thud. The woman was good-looking, a lonely man's dream, making Yankuba wonder whether he was not falling victim to the village Venus effect. In this, a man concludes that the village Venus is the most beautiful woman in the whole wide world simply because he cannot imagine anyone more beautiful. Yankuba shrugged mentally and walked up to the headmaster's desk. A fact is a fact, he reminded himself, and the fact is that this lady is a knockout. Thank you for coming, Mr. Bangura, boomed the headmaster, sitting forward with elbows on his desk, large hands clasped in front of him. His great mustache twitched. Please sit down, I won't take much of your time. Yankuba pulled a straight-back chair close to the desk and sat down, with the village Venus to his left. He nodded a greeting toward her, and she lifted large black eyes edged with thick lashes at him. He caught his breath and tore his gaze from her to the headmaster, lest he got lost in the depths of those eyes. Let me go through the introductions, the headmaster gestured toward the Venus. This is Miss Komara. Makalay Komara, my niece, and he turned his palm toward Yankuba. This is Mr. Bangura. Yankuba Bangura. He takes care of Class 5B. I'm pleased to meet you, sir. Makalay had a sweet, no-nonsense voice. She extended a slender hand and Yankuba grabbed it, feeling its softness. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, he said. Call me Yankuba. I don't like formalities, except on very formal occasions. Makalay smiled and Yankuba was enraptured. Dimples appeared during that brief, sweet smile. Quickly he released her hand, realizing that he had been holding it for too long. His heart was still thumping. The headmaster hid a smile of satisfaction behind his large hand as he toyed with his mustache. Makalay graduated from the Makini Teachers College, he said, and she'll be handling Class 4. I believe the two of you will be able to get along as teachers. The bell, announcing the lunch break, started to toll. The headmaster spread out his hands. Well, there goes the bell. And if Yankuba doesn't mind playing the role of a guide, Makalay is willing to be shown around. He cocked his large head at her. Aren't you, my dear? Makalay switched on a smile and stood up, clutching a black handbag. I don't mind being a tourist, she said, and giving Yankuba a full dose of her eyes continued, if Mr. Bangura. Okay. Yankuba, if Yankuba doesn't mind. Why should I? Yankuba hurriedly stood up. I would like to test my knowledge of the village. He opened the door and almost bowing said, after you. With a flutter of her eyelids, Makalay obeyed. They strolled away from the school building side by side, in a silence that was neither wholly embarrassing nor wholly relaxing. She clutched her bag and walked elegantly, almost as tall as Yankuba, whose hands were thrust deep into his pockets. He was scanning their surroundings for an object that would inspire both an entertaining and enlightening topic for conversation. Or, the church, Makalay pointed to a conspicuous building with a large cross at the roof of its entrance. I had almost forgotten there was a church in the village. She turned to Yankuba. Isn't it beautiful? Yankuba nodded. Yes, but beauty is only a superficial layer that could be hiding some deep ugliness. It seems to me, Makalay frowned, that you don't care about going to church, or you're not religious. Yankuba laughed. They stopped at a distance so that Makalay could have a better view of the imposing building with its images. You don't believe in God? Makalay ventured suspiciously. Of course, I do. Yankuba laughed again. You can believe in God and not go to church, because God is not in the churches. I believe that life comes only from previous life. And since all of us, including this material universe, have a beginning, then there must be an intelligent first cause without a beginning who started the beginning of all other things. That intelligent first cause is God. Makalay gave him a slow, sweet smile. You sound like a philosopher defending a disturbing belief. But why don't you go to church? Well, Yankuba turned away from the church. Let's keep walking. There are other things I'd like you to see before the lunch period ends. She sighed and came to his side. They started across the field toward the trees and the dusty, brown roofs of the houses at the other end of the field. It's not just a matter of not going to church, Yankuba answered finally. It's the attitude of religion in general. For example, all religions preach strongly about loving your neighbor as yourself, but what do their members in different countries do when politicians shoot them to war? They take sides with their country, instead of remaining neutral. With one corner of their mouths religions preach love, and with the other corner they glorify war. The day I meet with a religion which maintains neutrality toward the politics and wars of this world, well, that religion will win me over. Makalay stole a glance at Yankuba. He didn't look like a religious fanatic. His observations were true, and his argument was both logically and emotionally satisfying. But what kind of man was he? Makalay racked her brain. He sounded like a man you could trust. He sounded like a man who had reluctantly lost the deep respect he once had for a respectable institution, and yet managed to hold firm to justifiable principles of his own. He was like a man who had accepted, from people he trusted, the offer of a strong-looking chair which had collapsed under his weight, because it had been eaten from the inside by termites, a man who subsequently had vowed to peel away the superficial layers of any offer to peer at the quality of the object beneath. It seems to me, Makalay paused to lean back against a tree, as Yankuba did the same opposite her, that you are a man who goes through life seeing thorns with every rose. You're a pessimist. Yankuba sank his chin to his chest for a thoughtful moment. Then he looked up at her and smiled. I think I'm going to like you, if you don't mind. But to be candid, I don't go through life seeing thorns in every rose. I'm not pessimistic. I am rather thankful that thorns have roses. And since I have a measure of love for myself, I try to recognize the thorns in every rose and avoid being pricked. He gave her a meaningful look. And you, Makalay, are a lovely rose full of practical common sense. I hope you don't have so many thorns. Makalay turned away to hide her blushes. Then turning back to face Yankuba she said, You are funny. Are you married? No, Yankuba's heart skipped. Why do you ask? She laughed at the way people laugh after their relationship has graduated into a close bond of mutual understanding. I was going to ask whether your wife ever beat you in an argument. You have a way of twisting words that throw me off balance. She fluttered her eyes at him. You make me feel scolded. It was unintentional. And I must confess I find you very interesting and a good conversationalist. Yankuba was happy to see Makalay's large, dark eyes beam at the compliment. So may I have the pleasure of escorting you back to the safe hands of your uncle. He have turned and executed a sweeping bow that reduced Makalay to giggles. A knock sounded on the headmaster's door and Dura's head peered round the edge. The headmaster's face lit up with an amused smile. May I come in? Dura asked when he was already in and had closed the door. I am sorry to disturb you, but I really want to know how the situation stands. The headmaster closed the book he had been reading and sat back. Everything is under tight control. If we handle them carefully, we'll get what we want from them. But where are they now? Dura said, sitting down. Yankuba is showing her around, the headmaster guffawed. He'll be proposing to her soon if I can judge from the rapturous look on his face when I asked him to escort her around. Dura scratched his head, his face creased in a frown. Do you think it will be any good if I tell Yankuba that this Makalay was the same woman he rejected because we had not dash? No, no. The headmaster tugged at his mustache. There is no need for that. Besides, our good intentions may boomerang. Let them be. Let nature take its course. But why delay certainty? Dura asked. They are going to get married anyway, so why all this waste of time? Things do not happen so slowly in the villages. You are correct, the headmaster nodded, but Yankuba and Makalay did not grow up in the villages. That was my first mistake, lamented Dura. I shouldn't have. Never mind your mistake. They are not wasting time. It only looks like that. If you or anybody else should interfere prematurely, both of them may react the way Yankuba reacted when you told him you'd chosen a woman for him. Once again, I say, let them be. Let things happen naturally. If they discover that they love each other, they'll get married. Dura nodded like a lizard, his face a mask of ignorance. I don't understand much of what you say, he confessed, but coming from you, it must be the best thing to do. My wife and I will wait. Normally parents give consent. But for Yankuba, he has to give me, his father, consent. He shook his head mournfully. The world has turned upside down. He braced up suddenly as if he had spent too much pity on himself. I must hurry back to my farm, in case my wife starts to worry about me. The headmaster accompanied him to the door. Take care of yourself, he called after Dura as the latter hurried into the bushes nearby. Don't worry. Everything is going to be fine. But everything was not going fine 2 months later. Yankuba and Makalay continued seeing each other only as a result of Yankuba's devotional efforts. Makalay did not share many of his enthusiasms. But brief encounters had developed into a habit, and so Yankuba found himself sitting opposite Makalay in the spacious veranda of the headmaster's house. It was almost becoming a ritual between them. Makalay intended to break it, just as Yankuba intended to seal it with a proposal. The sun had traveled for the whole day from the east of Komolo to the west, taking along its fierce heat, and allowing a cool evening breeze to caress the roads, houses, trees, and people. On various verandas, older men lay in swinging hammocks, puffing on pipes, while their wives slaved in the kitchens at the back to prepare the evening meals. Long ago, Yankuba tilted back his chair, eyes roving Makalay's face. According to an ancient myth I read in school, male and female were united in one person. But one day, the gods were in a mischievous mood, and they separated the two. Ever since, men and women have wandered about the earth, seeking their lost half, to be one again. Why are you telling me all this? Makalay grimaced. I am not interested in myths. I know. But I am interested in you. I am in love with you. Me too. I am in love with me. She shrugged. I, therefore, cannot love another. Yankuba threw back his head and roared with laughter. My goodness. Talk about twisting words. He sat up. You are wonderful. You'd make me a beautiful wife with brains. Stop it, she snapped. I am not in love with you. You are. He relaxed back with a confident smile. But you haven't realized it yet. And I'll tell you this for free, if you marry me, I have the babies. Don't be disgusting. I don't find the idea of a man pregnant with a child of his wife funny, that's just in case you were trying to be funny. It's repulsive. Yankuba was silenced. He dropped his eyes and seemed to shrink inside his body. Then quickly he braced up. I'm sorry. That was not in good taste. You see, I thought you'd laugh. Makalay eyed him across the veranda as though weighing her next words. Can we stop seeing each other so exclusively? People have started to gossip, saying things about us that are not true. That can be easily taken care of, he replied. Let's get married. She stood up so abruptly her chair almost fell. It's obvious that you have not been listening to me. She headed for the open doorway, paused, then turned around. What attracts you to me, for goodness sake? He laughed. I know more about what attracts mosquitoes than what attracts me to you. He saw the annoyance on her face. Hey, don't get angry with me. All right, go ahead and be angry. You don't know how good you look when you do. Makalay sat down, deflated. That's better. More importantly, I find you attractive because you are beautiful. She did not blush. Instead, her face lit up with malicious satisfaction. Beauty, remember, is only a superficial layer, and mine may be hiding an ugly personality. Yankuba tilted back his chair and gave her one of his long, searching looks. He held her eyes for a spellbound moment. You are becoming adept at snatching up my words and flinging them in my face, at vulnerable moments. You make it easy for me to find reasons for disliking you. I don't like men who think too highly of themselves. You mean, you prefer men with an inferiority complex, so that you can act like Jezebel at home? How dare you, she glowered at him. You make me begin to hate you. Even though it is your fault that I am in love with you. If you were an unkind, snobbish introvert, I wouldn't have fallen in love with you, however good-looking you were. Makalay opened her mouth to speak, then closed it. Her vocabulary had flown away from her under the assault of Yankuba's ironic compliment. Let me say this, Yankuba said, before Makalay could regain her wits. You don't have to make up your mind now. We can court, for at least a period of 3 months, while you consider the idea of having me as your husband. At the end of it all, Makalay had regained her senses. I will still not want you, Mr. Cocksure of yourself. Yankuba didn't even blink. He continued in a soft, calm tone, courtship, when carried out intelligently, cautiously, and honorably, is a legitimate way for two people to get to know each other. He flapped away a fly that landed on his nose. And I want you to make time so that we can get to know each other better. There was an embarrassing silence. They sat as still as statues, staring across at one another. Makalay dropped her eyes and peeped up at him from beneath her thick eyelashes. Let me be very frank with you, she said, as you have been with me, I am not in love with you. A pinched look of pain crossed his face. You don't have to look as though it's the end of the world for you. She added, after all, there are many other women. But none like you. That's what you feel, because you have persuaded yourself to believe that you are in love with me. It's very flattering, I agree. But I can't allow you to continue nursing feelings that will not be reciprocated. That's why I want us to stop seeing each other so exclusively. For a fleeting moment it seemed as though Yankuba would break down. His face twitched as he struggled to either accept or reject his failure. Finally, he took a deep breath. What do you find so objectionable about me? He asked. At least let me know my flaws, my deficiencies, so that I can work on them, if possible. Calm down, please, Makalay said soothingly. You are beginning to raise your voice. And to be honest with you, I don't find any major thing to object about. It's just that, well, you sound so desperate, it makes me afraid of your real motive. Wait for me to finish. The motive might be buried in your subconscious or unconscious. I may be wrong. But wrongly or rightly, it makes me feel the way I do about you. Yankuba felt like snarling with rage. As far as he was concerned, his intentions and good motives were as clear as the sky for her to see. How could she speak as if he were a wolf in sheep's clothing? You mean you are not sure I am the kind of man you want? He asked, hesitantly. Or are you just trying to play Miss Hard to get with me? Don't ever say anything so stupid again. She stood up and glared down at him. I am not a child, Yankuba. I have made my own observations and collected my own experiences. Give you 3 months to court me. Bah. I know your type. I've met a dozen of your kind, sweet-tongued, using words designed to open emotions that should never be aroused in a woman, demonstrating a zeal that soon slows down to chronic inertia the moment you satisfy your manly ambitions of tumbling a woman into bed. She shook her head. Oh no, Yankuba. I think enough is enough. Yankuba got up slowly and looked her straight in the face. He groaned and tried to maintain a calm outward appearance, but the hurt was evident in his eyes. Makalay, he said, we have known each other now for about 2 months. Have I, during all this time, made a pass at you, or given you cause to think that I am after you just for sexual gratification? He tried a short laugh, but it was mirthless and hollow even to his ears. I never thought I had sunk so low in your opinion. But you have the right to allow your opinions to influence your decisions, however premature they are. Good night. He turned abruptly and hurried down the steps and along the dusty, wide road into the cool evening breeze. Makalay ran forward and stopped short at the top step, hand outstretched, mouth open to call him back. Then she changed her mind. There was no good reason for him to abandon her like that. She hated such a show of confidence in a man because it made her feel unimportant. Suddenly, feeling depressed, she ran to her room, flung herself on the bed and rained blows on her pillow. She cursed Yankuba for making her feel so confused and mixed up about him. She couldn't tell whether she only liked him, only wanted him, was only fond of him, only loved him, or whether she was feeling all these emotions simultaneously for him. No man had ever succeeded in tormenting her with such confused feelings, and this man had called her Jezebel and labeled her opinions as premature. Yankuba, she clenched her teeth and strangled her pillow. I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. But she didn't really believe it. And she hated herself for not believing she hated Yankuba. As a result, she got more confused and mixed up about him.